Chuck,
Hey, good afternoon.
good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. George,
It
nice to
is
meet you.
George.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Just a second, I'm opening up a note here real quick so that I can take notes of our conversation.
Yes, and I need to find out how to deploy AI companion.
Um,
So we'll
so,
figure it out. Yeah.
George, how do you find us?
I read that newsletter DCD, I think it's called.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you were mentioned there that with the relationship between TCDC and
correct.
a number of features that we've been talking about here in South Carolina, but haven't really caught any traction yet. But there's more to come.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm waiting on Mark. Jennifer's just joined us. These are my two amigos. I guess that
okay,
makes them
great.
three amigos. And so we have had several discussions. So why don't we just get started? And Chuck, thank you for being with us. And
You bet. Pleasure.
we have a total of four on this call, which is awesome. And I'm uh, I will just introduce you, and then I'll sort of give a little bit of a little starter intro, I guess. So Chuck is with Thunderhead Energy out of Texas, and
Correct.
he has several features of his company is providing to deploy power technology at mainly data centers in Texas. I'm going to just open it up for you to sort of explore that a little bit if you want to. Then I'll tell you what the landscape looks like here in South Carolina.
Yeah, it sounds good, George. Again, really nice to meet you. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you like finding us on Data Center Dynamics website, and it's great to meet you, and nice to meet you, Mark. My name is Chuck Marvin. I'm one of the co-founders of Thunderhead Energy Solutions. We're based in Texas. Our team is based in Texas, and we develop utility grade, utility scale on-site power solutions for the digital infrastructure industry. That includes data centers. It also includes advanced manufacturers, chip fabs, and other types of facilities that require large power loads. I guess there's one, we deal with a lot of different types of customers, but there's one thing that they all have in common, and it's that they all need a lot of power. Usually all looking for power in the next couple of years, and they have locations, or they have they're looking for a site in some sort of a market that is grid constrained, where the local utility, either primary utility or unregulated utilities in the area are not able to serve the demand for power at that location in the time frame required by the
Yes.
customer. And so what we do is we come in and we'll build a power plant on site. We serve our customers behind the meter. What that means is that we develop a solution adjacent to our customer's facility, and then we connect just directly to their facility, and we supply power. And our business
Perfect.
model is energy as a service. What that means is that we fund, design, build, own, and operate our power solutions. So there's no capital requirement for the customer. But what we do is once we build it and we're operating the power plant, we enter into a long-term contract or some sort of a contract with the customer where we are effectively selling power to the customer as a service. And so we essentially function as a private utility. We can operate anywhere in North America. Just a little bit more about us, real quick, before I'll open it up to questions. We're backed by a power-focused infrastructure fund called Harbert Infrastructure. It's spelled Harbert, and I have some marketing material for them that I could share if you all are interested. But Harbert is based in Birmingham, Alabama. Their power group is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. and they are a 38-year-old infrastructure fund that invests exclusively in power generation. So they have an existing portfolio of power generation assets across North America that encompasses both thermal, which is where we operate, so thermal generation, and then also renewables, and kind of across the board. And so they have deep experience around, investing into funding and operating power infrastructure, as does our core team. We're a great partnership together between us and Harbor. Their commitment to us as a first tranche of capital is to fund the development of 1,500 megawatts of contracted generation capacity. That's the equivalent of roughly $4.5 billion in capital commitment to us. And so that's our first tranche of money. We already right now are developing roughly 700 megawatts within that first
Oh,
1,500 megawatts across two projects. We'll be under construction here in the next couple of months on two projects. And then we have a fairly robust pipeline right now, frankly, of up to probably 3 to 3.5 gigawatts of generation. So there's a lot of demand for what we're doing. We feel like we've got a great solution to the problem. We're not capital constrained. Once we deploy the first tranche of capital for that 1,500 megawatts, then our investors they're actually already out there, putting together our second tranche of capital. So that's there's a lot more detail to give you
there
guys, but
is.
I'll pause there and maybe let you guys introduce yourselves and learn a little bit more about what y'all are trying to accomplish.
That'd be great. Why don't I just turn over to Mark and Jennifer, and then I'll come around the tail end and sort of tell you what the landscape looks like here in South, what I think the landscape looks like here in South Carolina. And so, Mark, you want to take it away? Just say hey and
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mark Lefevre. I was mostly I'm a techie and involved in a
Okay.
lot of tech. I did a lot of software engineering work, mostly consulting for years and years and years. And now I'm helping out Skeeta and George here with the energy side of things because power is a big deal to data centers. And since I know a lot about power and data centers and computers, uh, I know much more about energy than I ever really cared about, but that's okay. This is where we're at. So yeah, and I mean I just moved to South Carolina about 9 years ago, and um, while it has a much better energy landscape than New England, where I'm originally from, there are some problems.
Mhm.
So that's what we're sort of focused on is figuring out what we can do for South Carolina and what the trends are and where we need to position ourselves because we have a lot of factories, right?
Yeah.
So there, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting set of constraints.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
Good to meet you.
Jennifer, have you got a second to be able to say hey?
I do. Good afternoon. Thank you for being on. And I'm here just really just to listen and learn. I understand about the issues facing South Carolina as far as it relates to our energy grid. So I'm just looking for more solutions and trying to figure out where we fit in with that. So thank you.
You bet. Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
Jennifer. Thanks for being here.
So, yeah, so I did get interested in this. We had some massive senatorial hearings last year on the need for more energy, more solutions. And I would say that the bill that was passed and signed by the governor, if the needle was sitting on 50 when the meeting started, and by the time the governor had signed the bill, the needle probably had moved to maybe 51. So they really basically got nothing done. So but we got a
Mhm.
problem. We got a growing state.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to come here. We've
Mhm.
got an infrastructure that's challenged by growth,
Mhm.
and we've got some incumbent or legacy power companies that have a pretty tight grip, I guess, on
Mhm.
their territory
Mhm.
and therefore their legislators. So
Yeah.
we, and so we got Mission Impossible here in South Carolina. but we are trying to look at it.
Yeah, so do you mind if I talk a little bit about that for a second, just about
Absolutely.
kind of that environment? So first and foremost, I appreciate I appreciate why you're here. I understand why you're classifying it as a problem. It is a challenge for sure. It is a complicated it's a complicated market dynamic where there's a lot of demand for power at a time when legacy utilities are frankly unable to serve the demand and really like deliver a satisfactory customer experience to the customers. And so really what we're in is we're in a time of flux. We're in a time of drastic change. And that doesn't necessarily, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, in my opinion, I think that the dynamics that exist today are creating an environment where there can be a lot of positive change really really fast, and it does not have to be all bad news for the legacy utilities. In fact, it should not be. It's really important that businesses like ours actually develop good working relationships with utilities because in the long term, we're going to need power from a lot of different sources, a lot of different types of resources. That includes private power developers like us, but it also includes legacy utilities.
Yeah.
And over the long term, it's really important that we work well together. Today, there are environments where utilities are trying to protect their turf and they're trying to keep private developers like us out. However, it's actually impossible for utilities to keep us out, completely. And the reason why that is the case is that every single state, and every single, public state utility body, governing body, will have its own set of kind of regulations in that state that allow for the self-use. It essentially creates something called a self-use exemption. Um, and the wording will be different in the South Carolina's, public utility guidelines or regulations, but the meaning will essentially be the same. And what the intent of those regulations is, it says that a company create or can do whatever it has to do to manufacture power for itself, if it wants to, even in a regulated utility district where a local utility has a monopoly over providing power as a public service.
Let me see if I
Um,
got that right, Chuck. I'm sorry. You think
okay.
that the way it's interpreted is that a company can create its own, a manufacturing company can create its own uh, power environment to
Any
run
company, any
any.
company, not just a manufacturing company. A data
Okay.
center can manufacture power for itself. A manufacturing company can manufacture for itself, and this can happen even in a regulated utility district, or
Right.
in a monopolistic district. And so, what we do
Yeah.
as a business model is we come in and provide that as a service for that company, effectively allowing that company to manufacture power for itself. But we do it in such a way where that company doesn't have to put any capital up front in order to build the power solution. We bring the capital to build that power solution. And so we have not yet pursued a project in South Carolina. We've seen a couple of opportunities to look at opportunities in South Carolina, but we have not done a deep dive analysis yet. So what that means is that as of today, I don't know exactly what the local utility regulations look like in South Carolina. However, like I can almost assure you that your local utility regulations in South Carolina would have been written similarly to those of another state that we have operated in.
Mm.
And so once we get in and we understand what the requirements are in South Carolina, we would just have to simply build out a model that is similar to what we've done in other states. And really what that means from your all's perspective is that the only difference on a location by location basis, on a state by state basis, is what our contract looks like with our end user customer, who's the off taker of the power agreement. There's a variety of different types of contracts. And they can look like an energy service agreement where we are providing energy as a service, It can also look like an operating lease in some regulated areas, and we see this a lot in the north, up in like Michigan and Wisconsin. We have to structure our contract as like an operating lease. However, the economics end up being exactly the same. Like the
Yeah.
cost to the customer is the
Sure.
exact same,
Sure.
regardless of what the contract structure looks like. And all we're doing is we're coming in and we're allowing that company to manufacture power for themselves using our services because they don't know how to do that for
Right.
themselves.
Now
Yeah,
we're
I
not
think
going to
that
bleed. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think the challenge is, Chuck, that here the regulations are pretty freaking clear that you're not getting around the big hurdle because the big hurdle is laying cable to get the power there. And the regulations, the way everybody agrees that we've talked
Mhm.
to read, is that that power, whatever they're consuming, has to be available and deliverable by the power company at any minute. In other words, you can't turn on your plant until they've built the infrastructure, whether your client's going to use it or not. And that sort of like just does away with the advantage of using you at all at some point. Now how bad that is, I don't know because we haven't done a lot of exploration on, well, what is our power delivery like? Like we know our power, like the amount of production we have is, getting close to not being
Mhm.
enough. But I don't know if we are over capacity on cable or not. In fact, I don't think so. There's no indication that we're not struggling with that. So the way the regulations are written, they can't turn anything on until that equivalent amount of power that they're generating is deliverable by one of the utilities. And so even if the capacity is there, like they have to run the cable to do it. So the infrastructure cost is still, really high from that perspective. And the impact of that, and here's why this is really important, because you can always blow it off and say, well, if the cable's already there or whatever. But the impact of that is if they have to do anything at all, that's going to go on everyone's bill. That's going to go on
Sure.
every residential person's bill. And
Uh-huh.
so you're really not solving a problem. You're moving the problem back to the residents. So that's the concern. And that's actually what we're trying to get changed, right? That when George said, 1%, it's like, yeah, 1%, and it didn't fix the one problem that is better for everybody. Right,
So
because the billing's a big deal. Like nobody wants to pay for the data center or the factory to have their power. Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
No, I'm not sure if I mean it sounds like, so first of all, it sounds like you all have done a lot of research in your local area. Um, I just want to clarify that when we build a power plant on site adjacent to a data center, we're laying our own private cable to the data center as well. So
Right.
it's a private
But
it's a private behind the meter connection. The utility doesn't have to do anything.
no, but by law, they have to be able to supply
Well,
an equivalent amount of power to the to,
let,
to
let,
that site.
that is a great point for discussion, Mark, and I would take a little bit of exception to it, but not on this call. So, but I think that's definitely a dive we can do to really
Yeah,
clarify that obligation that the utility company has. My understanding was if they only committed to, never mind. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the point is that this is the first, Chuck is the first person who's actually presented us with a pathway or some light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, stating basically that they have been environments or that, and they're looking at environments and they think they can do anything in the 50 United States, which is awesome. That
I'd
has
like to see
never
it.
been, yeah.
Do
We
you have
want,
anything in New England, Chuck?
We we
Anywhere?
don't. We've got some
Right.
projects right now, some opportunities in Pennsylvania.
That
And
that
so
I can believe. I,
yeah, so
I, I
there's
bet you
there's
won't get
opportunities
into
in
Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island at all.
we're
by
I
the
mean,
way, Mark's a bit of a contrarian.
there's a reason why, the primary reason why we, I mean, there's the main reason why we probably wouldn't get into some of those states is because based on our understanding, we think that it would take it would be challenging to secure a permit for natural gas power generation in those states. And
Yep. Never get
uh,
one.
yeah, it would be hard for us to get a secure permit for a gas. It's possible to do so, but it's not possible to do so in the time frame that the customers are looking
Yeah.
for.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a virtual energy monopoly up there with good reason. I mean, they had an energy company where all the executives stole all the money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and like left the country. And then the other energy company had to pick it up, and everybody's bill went up, and that's why power up there is like I think it's 5 times more expensive than it is in the state of South Carolina.
So
Mm.
let me also mention two things. I failed to at the beginning, but this is a recorded conversation, and Chuck's knows that I'm going to put this on a YouTube channel so
Mhm.
I can share it with some of the other guys that are in this not able to attend this discussion, and so I want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, I would just say this that so a little bit more about our team.
Yes.
We are our team is comprised of we're a relatively small team, just of core operators in our business. Our entire team is comprised of people with a lot of experience in and around the investing into and the development and the operations of large energy infrastructure. Most of our teams comes from the midstream, like energy kind of space, which means, the development and operations of natural gas pipelines, natural gas processing facilities, power generation, and utilizing rotating equipment for compression of natural gas. And so that's where most of our team comes from. We have internally we've deployed roughly $5 billion of capital across a wide variety of different types of energy infrastructure. There's natural gas infrastructure across the United States. In every single state there's natural gas transportation infrastructure, and so we leverage a lot of our skills, a lot of our know-how. We've got deep expertise across fuel procurement. There's not a molecule of natural gas that we cannot touch across every single pipeline company, or commodity trading firm in the United States. So what we do when we start working with a customer, say a data center, is we design a technical solution that can solve their problem, meaning like generate the power to meet the unique requirements of that facility. We don't have like an off-the-shelf solution that where we have like a package of either turbines or reciprocating engines. We start with the unique customer requirements of that facility, and then we will custom engineer what we think is the best solution. And really what we're trying to optimize for are two things. We're trying to optimize for reliability as firstly, and then the second thing we're trying to do is optimize for cost. Unique thing about us, there are other companies out there that do what we do. Most of them are private equity like sponsored. We're backed by an infrastructure fund. We're not private equity backed. There's a difference, and really the primary difference is that we have a very low cost of capital relative to private equity like backed like kind of companies like us. And so what that allows us to do, usually we're able to provide our service in a very, very cost competitive way. We can usually be pretty cost competitive with local utilities, and we're almost always, significantly lower cost than other companies that are trying to do what we do. And so I guess another thing I'll just add is just due to the fact that we're a relatively small team right now. We've got two projects that we're getting ready to get off the ground, and these two projects alone could scale to roughly 2 gigawatts in size. So they're campus projects. One's a data center, another is a chip fab for a Taiwanese chip fab manufacturer. Um, and so the best way for us to like kind of show our capabilities is to start working on a project together. So just as an example, if Sita, you know, is working with a company like a data center developer in South Carolina that has a site, let's just say that's going to take 5 years for the utility to get there, and they're hoping to get power sooner than that. Well, what we could do is we could sign an NDA, take a look at the details of that site. We could start doing some deep analysis of like the fuel. solutions at the
Yeah.
site and the technical solutions for generation at the site, we would end up with a fairly robust proposal of what we think is the right approach to solving that problem. It would be the proposal would include like our technical solution, our fuel solution, meaning like which pipelines are we going to connect to, who are the shippers on those pipelines, what like how much of it, how much fuel is available for a firm offtake deal, and what's the pricing associated with that. Do we need to develop like a last mile pipeline to a major pipeline in order to bring fuel to that site, which we can do ourselves, and then what are the economics of all of that. And then we would also do like a deep dive on the environmental requirements for like what's our permitting approach in order to scale into like whatever the total load size is for that customer. And then also what type of contract will be required for us to operate within the public utility regulations of the state of South Carolina. And
Yeah.
I don't know what those are yet. So we would get into that, once there was an actual project for us to work on.
All right. Real quickly, this is a time call. I'm going to keep my stop clock, making sure that we don't get cut off in the middle of a great conversation because this is a great
Sure.
conversation. But let me just mention this. I was speaking with a couple of our utility companies spokesmen, and I said, why won't you allow a company to bring in their own power? I call it BYOP, bring
Mhm.
in your own power. And they said, well, we do, but it has to be 100% owned by the company and operated by the company. So no third parties. Well, that's just a
We
killer right there. Then that may be what Mark. So Mark and I are going to discuss that, but you want to take a shot at that?
Well, we've come up against similar requirements in Wisconsin, and we have found workarounds. In almost all cases we can find a workaround that can be protected in the courts. And one thing I'll just tell you right now is we don't take any operational risk. Our capital spend is roughly $2 million a megawatt for upfront capex for our project. So, if we start with a 100 megawatt, phase one solution, we're investing 200 to $250 million of our own money to build that plant. We're not going to take that risk unless we know definitively that there's a contract that we can operate in legally within the state of South Carolina.
Got it. So
But I will say this, that the state of Wisconsin has a similar requirement. The asset has to be owned by the customer. And so what we do there is we structure the contract as an operating lease, where we build it, where we lease it to the company is leasing it from us. We are providing, kind of O&M services to like
sure.
maintain the turbines. And the economics end up being exactly the same as if we were, working through an energy services
They
agreement.
just have to come up with the capital.
I will say, here's one other thing. Let me just mention one other thing. Um, there are some areas, like, let me just give you an example right now. Entergy is the primary utility in the state of Arkansas, Louisiana. Entergy is a giant regulated monopoly, um, and they really control all the purse strings for like energy infrastructure in the state of Arkansas. There's a lot of demand for new compute capacity, high performance compute capacity in Arkansas. So there's a fair number of data centers trying to get built there. In Arkansas, there's an economic development group similar to CETA that's trying to entice companies to move into the state of Arkansas. We're working with that economic development group. Um, and one of the things that they're trying to do is they want us to work with Entergy, because like long term, Entergy is always going to be there, and Entergy continues to build out their utility infrastructure. And so we are very open to coming into a conversation, even if there's no clearly defined way for us to operate. Start talking to that utility and see if there's a way for us to work together. In Arkansas, what Entergy is asking for, we know that we can still come in and do this behind the meter in Arkansas, but what Entergy is saying in Arkansas is they're saying if a behind the meter developer, if a data center partners up with a behind the meter developer, and that behind the meter developer is willing to work with Entergy, then Entergy will bring that project to the front of the interconnection queue and get make interconnection with that data center, according to the customer's time frame. So let's just say 2 years from now, as
Uh,
opposed to 5 years from now. But and so Entergy will make interconnection. At that point in time, Entergy might only be able to deliver 25 megawatts, of power. So they're not going to be able to meet the total demand for the customer. So we will build a power plant on site attached to that data center that is producing the large majority of the load. However, at a certain point in time that's negotiable between us and Entergy, we will agree to sell our power plant to Entergy, and Entergy will take our power plant, connect it, bolt it onto the grid, and ultimately, at a point in time, it will become a
absolutely.
grid asset. So
Yes.
so there are things that we can do even in environments where you feel like the utility has a stranglehold. I will say that we feel like in most cases we can operate without the utility's blessing. But we don't necessarily want you to, because long term we think
Yeah.
that our customers are going to want to have a good relationship with the utility,
Yes.
and our number one goal here is not to block a utility. Our number one goal is to be a great service provider for your
Yeah.
customer. And we'll
Yeah.
figure out whatever we need to do to make your customer happy. More often than not, like no data centers today want to be fully off grid. Every data center ultimately wants to have multiple sources of power for redundancy, and they really want the utility to be the primary source of power. And so when we come in and start working with a customer, we always keep that in mind. We're never going to do anything to disrupt the relationship between the customer and the utility,
Yeah.
because that's not what they want. And that's not
Yeah.
what we want either.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's not. Yeah. The problem is more the guys with the monopoly here want to keep the monopoly. And
Well, it's
that's
going to
what
be
the lobbying group told us rather clearly was
Mhm.
it's
no, from their perspective, every dollar they put in, no matter where and no matter how long it takes them to run wire or bring up new whatever capacity, earns them 10%. And my response was, they should give me their money. I can earn them 20% a lot quicker. Ridiculous.
uh,
But that is but if that is their attitude, that's their attitude. So just real quick, so you're saying like a utility might take 5 years to put something in place. That sounds really optimistic to me. And you're down at like 2 years. Is that roughly one of your selling points? Is that you can do it in a
we
couple of
we we can deliver. So our introductory pitch to you right now is that we can deliver upwards of 100 megawatts of power in 18 to 24 months in most locations around the country.
years? Whoa,
And
really?
and
yeah.
yeah, 18 to
And
24
you're
months.
running pipeline in that kind of time frame?
Yes. Yeah, we'll
Wow,
build last mile pipe. Well, we can do that within our business.
that's
Yes.
great. That's
We
fantastic.
we have like executive level relationships with Kinder Morgan, Energy Transfer, Enterprise, every single Exxon, every single major natural gas producer, transporter, shipper in the country. And we also have we brought in an internal partner that does last mile pipeline development. And when I say last mile pipeline development, we can build 20 to 30 miles of pipe in a year and a half to get a connection to a local site.
Wow. Okay.
So let
That's
me
cool.
just a couple of thoughts, and then we're going to sign off. Dan,
Sure.
I really enjoyed this, Chuck. First of all, I need to know what kind of a backup you put in place when you propose this project. That would be my first question. Do you have a backup? And then are you looking to go outside of gas, as in geothermal or small modular? That's the second question. But if you want to take the first one first, that's
Yeah, sure. So my answer to your first question is is we always start with the customer requirements, and then we design a solution to meet the customer requirements. If the customer needs a five nines uptime reliable solution that is guaranteed to not go down except for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes a year, we will design a solution that is guaranteed to solve that problem for them. It
Wow.
will be more expensive, but it will have a tremendous amount of redundancy built into the system, from the integration, from the generation side all the way through the integration, all the way to the customer bus. So there'll be, there can be like n+1+1 or n+2 redundancy across the entire system if necessary. We can have redundancy on the pipelines. We can have multiple pipeline connects in
Wow.
order to make sure that a pipeline doesn't come down. So there's lots of different things we can do. It all starts with the customer requirements.
Okay.
And as to technology, we are open to considering any type of technology so long as it has been proven to perform reliably in a utility scale environment over a very long period of time. And there has to be a lot of performance data, meaning millions of hours of performance data that shows that it can operate reliably. And so, we fully expect for SMR reactors to start playing a major role in like localized power over the course of the next 10 to 20 years. We're not going to be like taking technology risk on anything because our customers don't want us to. All our customers want is safe, reliable power. And that's the business that we're in.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay. Well, I did extend the call. We've been on it for about 40 minutes. It's been great. We've got a lot more. I'd also like to introduce you to some other people. We'd like to have a return visit if you might be able to squeeze it out of your busy schedule, maybe in a month or so. As
Happy to stay in touch.
that'd be
Happy to help. Happy to talk to you about how this might work for any of the stuff that you guys are working on or thinking about for sure.
No,
Well, we
that'd be great.
do. We do love the state of Texas, and we've had several conversations with Abilene Christian University and their next program, which is
Okay.
the thorium molten salt reactor, and
Ah,
that's fascinating work going on there. So
yep.
Texas is a very innovative state, and we love it. And you're going to send me, I believe, a little bit of collateral about this call, about the financing but I love your optimism. I'm glued to it. I think it's great, and and Mark is too.
Yeah, no, this is really informative. Thanks. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you
it
bet.
sounds cool. You guys are doing some cool stuff for sure.
Really thought
And
through
yeah,
it. Really,
if you
really
can
good
if you
thinking.
can ping your guys and find out like what South Carolina looks like in terms of other states, in terms of restrictiveness, and figure out how easy it'll be for you to get around whatever regulations, that would be great for our next round. Because
Yeah,
yeah, it just
Let
doesn't
me.
look too promising.
I'll see what I can dig up. That sounds
that'd be
good. And in
great.
the meantime, I'll send you a little bit more information about us. So really nice to meet you guys. Thank you
Thank
guys very
you,
much for your time.
Chuck.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you, Mark. Bye, guys.